That brings us to a big question tonight. Is economic diplomacy setting the terms of India's engagement with the world? And to talk about that, we are joined in the studio by Dilip Sinha, former diplomat, and Dr. Ram Upendra Das. He's an economist. Arun Sharma, a correspondent who will be covering the World Economic Forum at Davos, joins us from the newsroom in Delhi. And Shantanu Singh, whose report you just saw, will be joining us in just a bit from Davos in Switzerland, where the World Economic Forum is going to be held next week. So let's get started with you, Mr. Sinha, on from multilateral summits like the World Economic Forum to bilateral engagements that Prime Minister has been having over the past 3.5 years, and to summits like, say, the India-ASEAN Summit. A commemorative summit would be happening on the 25th of January. Would you say that India is setting the terms in terms of economic diplomacy when it comes to its engagement with various countries?
Economic diplomacy has been very important part of our engagement with the world for at least last 25 years or so. But what's important about this particular engagement is that there have been a series of reforms that have taken place in the last 2 years or so. And while that message has gone out to a certain section of the world, and that's reflected in the improvement that you can see in the FDI that is coming into India and in the Global Competitiveness Index of India. But Davos offers a particularly important forum because that is where the top industries of the world get together, the top leaders of the world come, and leaders of the civil society also are present, as also the international media. So it's important, as we had done in the early part of our economic reforms in the early 90s, to use Davos as a platform for projecting this new India. This is an opportunity that we have for this, both for projecting India and its economic reforms that have taken place and the opportunities that it offers, and also for the theme of the this conference, which is how to develop institutions for in a fractured world, where our Prime Minister will have an opportunity to project his views on this very important theme.
Right, Mr. Sinha, but does the very fact that Prime Minister Modi will be delivering the keynote address in the opening plenary session show that there is enormous economic heft that India today has in the world, and the world recognizes that?
Absolutely. That's important. The economic position of India, as the World Economic Forum's report says, that there's a great potential that India has and the opportunities that international business is looking for. But equally important at Davos would be the ideas that our Prime Minister will put forward on the reform of global institutions to meet the changes that are taking place right now in the world. And it is these larger ideas that will be as important as the business ideas of talking to business leaders and business magnates.
So, Arun, what would be those big ideas, according to you, that the Prime Minister could be projecting to the world? And not just him, 6 union ministers and 2 chief ministers would also be there. So what will be the India narrative there at Davos?
Well, talking about the big idea as far as the Davos is concerned, I mean, it can be divided into 2 parts. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, for sure, will be highlighting the reforms that has taken place in last 3.5 years or so. And the biggest reform is that is about the GST, that is the goods and services tax. And second, primarily that the way India has jumped as far as ease of doing business is concerned. So that would be something which Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be highlighting on this global platform, because the idea is because government to government, government to business interactions will take place. And that will be the best place to showcase how India has emerged as an economic superpower in last 3.5 years. So that would be one thing. Second part would be surely a vision from India's side. That what exactly is the vision? Because you must recall, Munmun, that just a few days back, the founder of World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, clearly said that Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas of India is a model which India is following as of now, that other countries should also replicate, and that can only go ahead well and well, because this time theme of the World Economic Forum is clearly that how you create a shared vision in this fractured world. So when India's largest democracy will be opening the session, so on the other side, India's oldest democracy, that is the USA, the Donald Trump would be closing the session with his speech. So when on one side, when India is talking about Make in India, China is talking about Make in China, America is talking about America First. So World Economic Forum would be a forum where all the countries would be coming coming together and talking about that how can we all together go forward on a development path, taking all together. So that would be a vision that primarily Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be focusing and giving his vision as far as the economy is concerned.
Absolutely. And Dr. Das, coming to you now, considering the immense investment possibilities in India, considering the fact that we are an over $2 trillion economy and we are set to be a $5 to $6 trillion economy in the next few years, and considering that disposable incomes in India is expected to rise in a massive way in future, do you see that foreign investors would be interested in the India growth story? There's already a lot of rise in FDI that has taken place in the last few years. Is that expected to go up exponentially?
Definitely, because you would have realized that this forum is a forum where world leaders meet with each other, but at the same time there is interaction with the who's who of the corporate world, the multinationals. And today, if you see the domestic economy of a country like India and its size and dimensions gets enmeshed with what happens in the external world. And where external linkages actually end and domestic begins and vice versa is very difficult to distinguish in today's modern world, the way economies actually are structured. But at the same time, as the theme suggests, this is a fractured world because of rise in protectionism, trade protectionism all over the world. At the same time, we also recognize that there is considerable degree of interdependence, economic interdependence among countries. And in this context, if you see foreign direct investment flows to projected manifold increase in per capita incomes in India, and also put together the developmental challenges that India still has to confront, that has to be converted into business opportunities. These two combined, I completely agree that Indian economy and the developmental imperatives would serve as an important magnet to global FDI inflows, and that can actually shape the fractured world and reconnect perhaps for a common destiny.
Can there be a shared future, Mr. Sinha, in a fractured world like this, and how can India contribute to this?
Well, there has to be, and that's the theme of this conference. One of the points that is being discussed here is the shock of globalization, or the shocks of globalization, and the proliferation of the social media, and the problems that the world faces today because of the inability of governments and of international organizations to cope with the technological changes that are taking place, as a result of which there is social fragmentation taking place, there is global inequality rising. In this, India's experience of development and also being a democracy and of projecting inclusive growth, these are experiences that are extremely important, because we offer a different model of development to that of certain other countries that we are all aware of, where there is a top-down government-controlled economy, whereas in India it's growth taking place in an environment of free economy and democracy. So this experience is extremely important for other countries, for their national development, as well as for the international organizations and for their reform, which is the theme of this Davos
Mr. Sinha, also, since we are saying that there is economic diplomacy, which is really at the heart of India's relationship with various countries, and various countries do recognize India's economic heft. But apart from that, we'll also see India's cuisine and yoga being showcased at the World Economic Forum in Davos. So will our soft power also be showcased, besides, of course, our economic hard power?
Yes, we have seen that that we have this projection as well taking place in Davos. Yoga, of course, has been now being projected by India for the last 3 years, and it's become extremely popular. The realization, yoga was popular even earlier, but the projection that's been made now in terms as part of the solutions to the problems of economic problems as well. That this is a problem that it takes care of your mental health, your physical health, in an environment of extreme competition and tension that this global world creates, where yoga also is part of the institutions that we need to create for a shared future.
Okay. Arun Sharma, again on the economic aspect of the World Economic Forum, 2 chief ministers would be attending the World Economic Forum from India, And there is, in fact, a competition that is taking place between states on ease of doing business. And so many states have carried out far too many reforms in the last few years. So will cooperative federalism be part of India's message at Davos?
Well, that would be our strength as well, Manmohan, because cooperative federalism is something which India is known for as far as the global arena is concerned. And primarily, if we try to do a SWOT analysis of this entire event, India on one side will be showcasing its strengths as far as reforms are concerned. It will also be learning from other countries, because talking about the state-specific aspect, I mean, as far as our states are concerned, various states have various strengths. So how can that states can come forward in global arena and can showcase their strength, and what exactly is required from other countries that we can take down to the far-flung areas in different states? That is also a basic idea, because if in case we're talking about per drops more crops as far as agriculture is concerned, so how can we learn from countries like Israel, where they're doing really very, very well as far as agriculture sector is concerned? When we're talking about artificial intelligence, now the railway minister has also introduced a security-wide drones in our country. So we are learning from other countries as well, and that's the basic idea, that how can we showcase our strength and learn from other countries in all the aspect, in primarily 26 sectors, various sectors, and can implement to ground level or the ground or the far-flung areas in our country.
Dr. Das, is there global recognition of the reforms that India has undertaken? Is there global recognition of the fact that these are not just reforms but are transformative reforms for the next generation, like GST or the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code? And how does the international community look at the recent round of, say, FDI liberalization that we've seen? And is all that going to be a major agent or catalyst for foreign investment into India?
If you see the latest pronouncements by most of the international agencies, World Bank and IMF, or the credit rating agencies, or even the global leaders, what they have been saying about India, most recently the Israeli Prime Minister, what he defined India as, if you take all these together and also put it in the context of a few years back, when the global community actually was harping on the fact that India is actually not doing enough in terms of economic reforms like GST and the bankruptcy code that you mentioned. Now that these are a reality, you can only expect that the global community is going to take India and Indian economy and the prospects of growing together by getting connected with Indian economy much, much brighter. And that actually is going to contribute to our economic growth and perhaps make more resources available at our disposal to address some of the developmental challenges of poverty alleviation, inequality, health, education, and so on.
Okay, now one common question that I want to ask from all of you, and Arun, I'll come to you on that first, is that what is the biggest takeaway that India can expect, and which is the biggest takeaway that the world can expect from Davos this time around?
Well, it's really too tough to answer, Manmohan, that what exactly will be a one takeaway, because a lot of countries, more than 60 countries would be participating, and everybody would be having different ideas. But what my big what I would be expecting or focusing on will be on artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is something which will be very much watched about, because a lot of solutions can come from the artificial intelligence, and that is what I think can be focus area. And as far as vision is concerned, a lot of countries would try to learn from each other as far as artificial intelligence is concerned.
Okay, a quick response from you, Dr. Das.
In my view, the basic theme of Davos 2018 and what has been experimented and pronounced in India, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, I think that is a paradigm which needs to be applied at the global level, where we need to have a framework in terms of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas to address a fractured global economy and society and move ahead together.
Mr. Sinha?
Well, there would be two really. One is to project India and the reforms that have taken place recently, and to realize the full potential of our economic interaction with the world. But the other and more important, I would say, would be presenting our ideas on how the world should regulate the new technologies and how it should meet the challenge of this of the proliferation of the new technology, because of which the world is coming closer at one level. while at the same time international institutions and governments are struggling to cope with this change.
Absolutely, and this is an opportunity to find more convergences and not divergences for all countries, including India. And of course, India's growth story can be one of those convergences where investors, global leaders, they're all interested in the Indian growth story. And of course, that leads to greater employment and greater social benefit as well within the country. Thank you so much, Arun, as well as Dr. Das and Mr. Sinha for having joined us on News 9 tonight.